What if I told you that to solve some of our most complex problems, we shouldn't be looking at math, but at nature? It sounds kind of wild, right? Well, today we're diving into something called evolutionary computing. And it does exactly that. It borrows its problem-solving playbook from the most powerful optimization engine on the entire planet. All right, let's just jump right in with a super high-stakes scenario. Picture this. You're in a self-driving car. Everything's fine. Then, out of nowhere, it's facing an impossible life-or-death choice. So, what does it do? How does a machine make that call in literally a split second?
You know, your first thought is probably, well, it runs some perfect mathematical calculation, right? But here's the thing. In the real world, perfection takes time. A lot of time. Calculating the single, absolute best outcome could take minutes, maybe even hours, and by then, it's way too late. So what we really need is a totally different approach, one that finds a good enough solution and finds it right now.
So let's really break this dilemma down. A pedestrian suddenly appears. Okay, option 1, slam on the brakes, but that risks a huge multi-car pileup from the cars behind you. Option 2, swerve, but that could mean a head-on collision with oncoming traffic. The car has milliseconds, literally milliseconds to make a choice. The goal here isn't about finding some perfect, elegant answer, no way. It's about finding the best available option that minimizes the total harm. And that's exactly where traditional math just falls apart.
Okay, so if traditional math is out, where do we find an algorithm that's fast enough, smart enough, and frankly tough enough for these kinds of messy, real-world problems? Well, it turns out we look to the oldest, most successful problem solver on the entire planet.
You guessed it, we're talking about Darwinian natural selection. The solution is literally inspired by the process that has been solving the ultimate complex problem, survival, for billions of years. Think about it. It's a search engine and an optimization tool, all rolled into one incredible natural algorithm.
And a classic example of the giraffe illustrates this perfectly. So picture a whole population of ancient giraffes. You've got some with shorter necks, some with medium necks, some with longer ones, a lot of variety. Then the environment changes. A pressure appears. The only good food left is way up on the highest branches. Well, what happens? The giraffes with shorter necks can't reach the food. They don't survive, so they can't have babies. But the giraffes with those slightly longer necks, they thrive. They eat, they survive, they reproduce, and they pass that long neck trait on to their kids. You repeat this over and over, generation after generation, and boom, the whole population optimizes itself to have long necks. It's such a simple idea, but it's unbelievably powerful.
Okay, that's the biology. Super cool. But how on earth do we take this grand natural process and actually turn it into computer code? Well, it starts by translating the language of DNA into the language of data.
So, the key piece of this whole puzzle is the idea of a chromosome. Now, in biology, it's that little package of DNA that holds all your genetic information. In the world of evolutionary computing, a chromosome is just a potential solution to our problem. That's it. It's a possible answer encoded as a string of data. So, going back to our self-driving car, one chromosome might be a little string of code that represents brake at 70% power and swerve right 15 degrees.
And what's just so cool about this is how beautifully these concepts map from one world to the other. So the biological DNA, that's our complete set of instructions for one potential solution. A single gene, that's just one tiny piece of the solution, like that brake at 70% part. And then you get the really fun stuff, crossover and mutation. These are just our computational tools for creating brand new solutions by combining or randomly tweaking the old ones. It's amazing how well it fits.
All right, so we've got the lingo down. Let's actually walk through how one of these algorithms evolves its way to an answer.
So it all happens in this simple but incredibly powerful loop. Step 1. The algorithm just generates a whole population of random solutions for the car. I mean, hundreds of them. Some slam the brakes, some swerve left, some do a weird combination of things. Total chaos. Then, step 2, it tests every single one of them in a simulation and asks, how good was that? How much damage was caused? That score is what we call its fitness. Then comes the Darwinian part. The best solutions, the fittest ones, get selected to be parents. They then reproduce. By combining their strategies, that's the crossover, and their code gets a few tiny random changes, that's the mutation. This creates a whole new generation of offspring solutions. And here's the kicker. You repeat this entire cycle over and over, thousands of times a second. And what you see is the population rapidly evolving towards a really, really good solution that minimizes harm.
A really great way to picture what's happening is to think of it like a search landscape. Just imagine a huge, foggy mountain range. The height of any point on that range represents how good a solution is. The highest peaks are the best possible answers. Now, a more traditional algorithm is like a single hiker trying to find the highest peak. It just starts walking uphill from where it is and stops at the first peak it finds. But what if that's just a small hill? It gets stuck. An evolutionary algorithm, on the other hand, is like dropping 100 hikers all over the mountain range at once. They all start climbing, they can see where the others are, and they can even share notes. This way, they explore tons of different peaks at the same time, and they have a much, much better chance of finding the actual highest mountain in the entire range. The true best solution.
And really, the absolute heart of this whole process, the thing that makes it all work, is something called the fitness function. Think of it as the judge. It's the piece of code that looks at every single solution and gives it a score. For our car, a really high fitness score would mean something like 0 human injuries and minimal vehicle damage. Now here's a key detail. Even when our real-world goal is to minimize something, like damage, the algorithm is always trying to maximize its fitness score. It's always climbing, always trying to get that higher number. It's a subtle but super important distinction.
Okay, let's bring this all home. When does this crazy nature-inspired approach actually win? When does evolution beat pure by-the-book math?
Well, think of it like this. Traditional numerical optimization is amazing when you have a perfectly defined problem and plenty of time to find the one single perfect answer. It's like a sniper, carefully lining up one perfect shot. But evolutionary computing? It thrives when things are complicated, messy, and you don't have all day. You know, like real life. It's not looking for that one perfect bullseye. Instead, it's like sending out a whole squad to find a really good position, and they do it fast.
So why does any of this matter to you? Well, because this stuff is being used to solve some insane problems. We're talking about those time-critical decisions in our self-driving car example, for sure, but also things like managing a global supply chain where market demands are just fluctuating like crazy every single day. It's even used in creative design where there isn't one right answer, and you just want to explore a whole universe of interesting possibilities.
And this all leads to this really beautiful idea that comes up in the source material. You're starting with these dead simple rules, right? Selection, crossover, mutation, that's it. But when you let them interact over and over, thousands and thousands of times, the behavior that comes out the other end is incredibly complex, it's intelligent, and a lot of the time, it's totally surprising. It's this concept called emergence, where the whole becomes so much more than the sum of its parts.
Which really just leaves us with one final big question to think about. We've seen how we can use nature's own algorithm to tackle things like vehicle safety and global logistics. So what other huge, messy, seemingly unsolvable problems are out there right now that we could maybe solve by just creating the right conditions and simply letting the solution evolve on its own?